that I thought, I've just got to take some time off and think about why I was so unbelievably wrong. So I went pheasant hunting, not that it was the pheasant's fault, but that is kind of a way to clear your head. And I wound up, because bird hunting really is, again, not good for the birds, but very good for you. And I wound up in South Dakota with Kevin, among other people, including a couple of my college roommates. And I was so impressed by him as a person. And really, having spent my life in Washington, I can tell you, if you're not from here, the key question about anybody who runs any institution in Washington is, how false is this person? God sends messages, we can't immediately translate all of them, so I can't tell you what that meant. There clearly is meaning. The point is, the man who runs Heritage is not false at all. In fact, my assessment of him was, he's completely real. He's an honest person. He means it. He's not playing a role. And that was so thrilling to me to see that. And by the way, it was confirmed by one of Heritage's security people who was standing backstage with me, and I asked him, because the security guys always know, they're all former cops. You know, they've seen everything. They have seen humanity in various states of drunken undress. Like, you can't shock them. And they know who's real and who's not. And I asked, what do you think? And one of them said to me, to my face, I would go to war for him. And I thought, and these are the kind of people who will tell you the truth. I mean, like, why would he lie to me? I don't even know his name, but he meant it. And so to see a leader, a real leader at the helm of an institution that matters, that has the kind of throw weight that Heritage does, was thrilling, was absolutely thrilling for me. Because the story of the last decade is the collapse of leadership, not of the population. The people remain noble and decent, so far as I can tell. I still live here, I'm never leaving. We have good people, we have terrible people in charge. And not just of our government, but of the institutions that I grew up in. The Episcopal Church, my high school, I could just go on and on and on. They're all run by weak people. And it's the same in marriage. Weak husband causes angry wife. Weak leaders cause an angry country. That's true. And to see someone who's not a weak leader at the helm of Heritage just thrilled me. So I wanted to come for that reason, just being totally blunt with you. And the second reason is to pay homage and to give some measure of thanks to Ed Fulner for giving me my first job, which changed my life. And to say I was not a promising hire would be an understatement. It's not false modesty. In fact, if anything, I'm underplaying it. But I was leaving college without a degree or a job and attempting to marry my girlfriend, which I subsequently did, and ran into this giant roadblock in the form of her Episcopal priest father, who said, no, job first. And not only did I not have a job, I had no idea what I wanted to do. And so I applied to a couple of different places, the CIA, if you can even imagine, some boarding school in Rabat, because I thought, Morocco, lower standards, maybe they'll hire me. No. And I wound up at Heritage, as you heard, as a fact checker, copy editor at Policy Review, the quarterly magazine of the Heritage Foundation. And that job absolutely changed my life. I was paid $14,000 a year plus a $100 bill for Christmas, which Dr. Fulner gave out personally to the entire staff, at least half of whom went downstairs and bought liquor with it at the liquor store, which I think is now part of the intern housing. But it was a long time ago. It was so long ago I smoked in my office. That's how long ago it was. That's like riding a mule to work, just to put it in the context of American history. Smoke in your office? Yeah, I did. In fact, Matt Spalding told me to stop one day, and I thought, wow. This modernization program is moving too fast for me. I can't deal with it. I've always been conservative in the truest sense. But Matt, you were right, and I quit. And anyway. But yes, it was a long time ago. And in the course of that job, though I didn't get rich, to be honest with you, I did learn what I wanted to do with the rest of my life, which was become a journalist. And that was really under the guidance of a man called Adam Meyerson, who ran it, who was... that was 32 years ago, and to this day, he really is the kindest person I've ever worked for. Just kind and patient, and he thought I was completely nuts. He thought I was a lunatic, and I could tell he thought that. But he was patient with me through my entire year and a half there, helped me get my next job at a newspaper in Arkansas, because no one else would hire me, but he set me up with this job. He walked into my cubicle and said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And so I called my bride, who was a religion teacher at the local Episcopal school, and I said, "Do you want to move to Arkansas?" And what a wonderful woman she's turned out to be. And she said, "Of course. Is that near Colorado?" Quote. But she was willing to go there. Very much a Northeasterner at heart, but and we did, and we loved it. But I got there because Adam Meyerson felt that it was his job to help me get my next job, because his job was to train up reasonable people and put them in journalism, even if it meant sending them to Arkansas. And I was thinking about Heritage this morning in the shower, not a place I think about it, but I did today. And what makes it great, and one of the best things about Heritage over time, longitudinally, 50 years say, is that Heritage has always hired a lot of people. And that is an underrated thing. It really is. Giving people a job, even if it's 14 grand a year plus a $100 bill for liquor, you change someone's life. You put them on a trajectory. At least that's true for me. I mean, I had not succeeded in school, to put it mildly. And I did not feel, I always felt like I was smart. Not one other person felt that way. Until I got to Heritage. I'm not sure they were super impressed, but they treated me like an adult. Because they had high intellectual standards. They were standards of honesty. And the idea at Heritage when I worked there wasn't just that we're fighting this war against the other side, of course, but it did not logically follow from that at Heritage that you could say whatever you wanted. Just because the other side was rotten didn't mean you could be rotten. They really hewed to the highest standards of factual accuracy, intellectual honesty. They really meant it. They did. And even if you didn't agree with them, they were very serious about it. They were intellectually serious people, every single person I worked with. The receptionist in the office at Policy Review was going to school at night to learn Russian. And then the week I started at Policy Review, the Soviet Union collapsed, which was an amazing thing. The coup against Gorbachev in the third week of August 1991 was the week I started at Heritage. And in retrospect, of course, you never appreciate the significance of things as they happen to you. You can't really know what the movie's about until it ends. But at the time, we didn't really appreciate how, well, two things. One, our entire political orientation was based on this war between the United States and the Soviet Union, this Cold War, but very much a war. And every part of our politics, as you well remember, those of you my age and older remember, every part of our politics revolved around that central conflict. That's the first lesson of history. Nothing is permanent except our own demise and God. But we didn't kind of get that. If you told me then that this week the Department of Justice would have indicted a group of people I don't agree with, by the way, on a lot of different issues, black nationalist socialists from Florida, okay, kind of not my demographic, but would have indicted them for criticizing the U.S. position, the Biden administration's position on the war in Ukraine, and charged them with felonies for which they're each facing 10 years in prison. If you told me that could happen here, I would have laughed at you. No, we have a First Amendment. That can't happen here, but it has, that and a lot of other things, which are gravely unsettling, actually, in people who were rooted in the Cold War story and the reality of the Cold War, again, my age, 53, kind of know where that goes. So the purpose of my talk, which by the way, I will keep brief. I'm an inveterate talker. I can literally talk forever. You can't even imagine my capacity for loquaciousness. I mean, it has no end. It's a bottomless well. If you dropped a quarter off the observation deck of the Empire State Building, how long would it take to hit the sidewalk? That was always what we talked about when we were kids. You would never hear it. In my case, I can literally go on first. So I will stop, and Kevin and I are going to have a conversation, which I think will be much more edifying. But I would just say two things about the present moment, because I think about them all the time. And I brood on this constantly. And then I take every afternoon, because fundamentally I'm Swedish, I take a sauna every day. As a rest, I do, I'm not kidding, every single day, never miss it. And my whole family does. It's like our one cultural contribution. Oh, we're Swedish, ooh, it's a very deep ethnicity. Oh, yes. A lot of Swedish traditions. You should hear our comedy. It's hilarious. But the one thing I do is take a sauna to kind of get out of my head and get away from all this stuff, and I never can, and I just use my time in the sauna to brood more. But here are two conclusions I've come to, which I think are slightly less depressing than the most obvious, which is the country's really going at high speed in the wrong direction. Wanderers in Boston and became a success and the head of a federal agency and served in the Marine Corps and sort of lived the America that you imagine is possible for people who are smart and try hard and all that. For people of that age, it's too much, actually. The change is too by it. I would say two things that are, I think, worth thinking about. The first is you look around and you see so many people break under the strain, under the down. Here's the second thing I'd like to say before I get to the conversation with Dr. Roberts, which is that we're saying, I have an idea, let's castrate the next generation. Let's sexually mutilate children. I'm sorry, that's not a political debate. What? It has nothing to do with politics. What's the outcome we're desiring here? An androgynous population? Is that really what are we arguing for that? I don't think anyone could defend that as a positive outcome. But the weight of the government and a lot of corporate interests are behind that. Well, what is that? Well, it's irrational.